Welcome back, everyone. This is Mr. Brain, your friendly neighborhood gaming dad, back with another hero breakdown video. Now, I apologize for being on hiatus for as long as I was. I was enjoying a little bit of a vacation with my family, but I came back to an old video requested to me by Danger Ghost 6165. I believe I got the numbers right. I will tag them below. Thank you for suggesting doing this video, and I'm happy to get around to it. Without further ado, we will be breaking down this hero into the standard 4 steps I like to do. I will talk about their skills, what they're used for, a good talent build for them, as well as what heroes you should be pairing this commander with in order to get maximum effectiveness. And let's get into it. Lewis's first skill is arguably broken in more ways than one. For 1000 rage, deals damage to up to 5 enemy squads in a fan-shaped area, damage factor 10,000, and damage taken by each enemy squad reduced by 15% for each additional target enemy squad. Now, this is broken to me in 2 ways. One, the insane amount of damage that it does even to a single target is ridiculous. It's not as high as some of the straight single target damage you will see out of commanders such as the new ones like Bella, with her maxing out at 12,000 with an increase in damage dealt. However, the fact that it is an AoE damage that, if hitting 5 targets, I believe is reduced to about 4,000 apiece, is significant because he's not locked to any one combat style. His AoE damage can still hit very hard, but as the amount of enemies decrease on the battlefield or in arena, he will do more and more damage to help finish off what isn't already dead. And that does come into play with some of his other skills. Skill number 2 increases skill damage by up to 30% and increases the HP of ranged squads by up to 10% when garrisoning. The second part of this skill is kind of minor because increasing the HP of a troop type that naturally has low HP may seem like you're helping to shore up some of its weaknesses, but you're really not. 10% isn't significant when comparing it to other troop types that's even without buffs. 10% buff to HP doesn't even come close to putting it on par with even riders, I believe. And definitely not infantry, even before they've been buffed. So that part of the skill is insignificant. However, that 30% skill damage buff changes that 10,000 to 13,000. Just like that. And that does also factor in, the 30% factors in after the damage reduction of 15%. So it's 30% of 4,000 on 5 targets. But that's still massive. That puts him easily first or second in damage, depending on how you want to look at it. Third skill, very straightforward. Range squad attack of 30%. I am kind of sad that it's only a 30% buff because some of the newer commanders have been getting buffs in their skills of 40%. So I hope they give him a little bit of a buff in that regard, even if it's to another stat that isn't locked to Garrison. But a 30% squad attack does also factor into this damage if you're running a ranged team, which in arena or likely in open field, you're going to be doing that. And finally, this skill makes him arguably the second or third best rage engine in the game. He's not first. That title is very clearly held by Charlie with his 250 rage generation. And depending on how often it procs, the 140 rage from a 10% chance on Catherine can overpower Lewis's, but just having this skill maxed out reduces a 10-second skill cycle down to an 8-second with no other buffs. It is very substantial. And we all know the faster you can get rage, the more skills you're getting off, which is just pumping his damage. And his awakened skill is just an enhancement of his first skill. Ups 10,000 up to 12,000, making that 5 enemy squad damage, I believe 4,800 if I remember correctly. And it does change from a fan-shaped area to a circular area. This is important for 2 reasons. One, you do not have to worry too much about positioning when dealing with a circular area, because it doesn't really shrink his AoE that much between fan to circular. And you can put yourself in the middle of the fight to do quite a bit of damage. The other thing that's important here is when he's on Garrison, you can't control who he's attacking. So to have the ability to have this circular area of AoE in case some idiot who's rallying against a Lewis on a shelter or a tower or a defensive structure decides to try and swarm it, they're going to be punished for it. If it's just a fan-shaped area, they can get behind you and start swarming you from behind. Not advised still, but you're going to take less damage from a fan-shaped area. If it's circular, you can't avoid it. And if any of you have tried to swarm a tower with a Lewis on it that's awakened, you know that pain. It hurts. You won't see those troops again. Now, if you haven't figured out from how I talked about him, there's a couple of areas that you use him. One, he is still one of the better Garrison commanders, primarily as a secondary to someone else, giving them enhanced rage generation and good damage on the tankier rallies that may come your way, and is also very good at countering swarms that may be hitting your towers or your cities. The other thing is he is almost essential in Arena of Doom to do well, primarily because of that second part of his skill, of his first skill, being able to do more and more damage to single targets as the fight goes on, whereas your other AoE commanders aren't doing that. Because as fight goes on, Akemi is going to do less and less damage because there's less enemies to hit. He will pick his damage up to 10,000 or 12,000 against single targets, which will allow him to finish off fights that teams without him wouldn't be able to do. And believe me, if you've been stuck against a Raigoro as the last troop, you want to be able to finish him off. And AoE commanders aren't going to be able to do that. He can. And of course, open field, he's still one of the best and still one of the first enemies you should be targeting to kill in open field, just because of the sheer amount of damage that he can do. If you don't wipe him out quickly on the field, he's going to get better trades than you. There's just no way around it. However, I will say it is quite annoying to see mile-long reports from Lewis attacks simply because his AoE keeps hitting other troops that aren't hitting me. And it takes forever to scroll through that mess. On to talent builds. Because most of the time you're going to be using him as a support character, a secondary, you don't really need to focus too much into his talent trees. However, contrary to what I have here, this is me testing out a couple of things in Arena, you should still be going for the max skill tree, because this will allow you to get those skills off much faster. I believe you can get him down to about a 6 or a 7 second skill cycle, which is pretty nuts. It's not the fastest, but it's definitely up there. but having those additional rage generating talents is a must on Lewis. You can come over into the ranged tree, pick up Battle Craze for a little bit extra, but make sure you're doing the math to see that that's worth it. You definitely want to pick up the additional skill damage, because if you're pairing him with someone that isn't doing skill damage, you're doing it wrong. Skill damage, reducing skill damage because you want to be able to avoid getting hit yourself as much as you can. I don't feel this one is worth it, simply because if you're at 50% or less with Lewis, you should be backing off by that point. Of course, ranged squad attack, always nice. Ranged squad damage to infantry squads, always nice. The higher you can get in these, you're going to like what you get. Avoid his garrison tree, because you should not be leading with Lewis on a garrison tree. So stick to skill, put the rest of your points in ranged. You're not going to go wrong. Now, what commanders can you pair with him to really amp his damage? The first obvious one is one you get early on, and that is Lee. Even if you don't put a lot of skill points into Lee or Lewis, you'll find that a Lee-Lewis combo is extremely deadly, because the fan-shaped area for Lee is the same as the fan-shaped area for Lewis, and putting them together in arena gives Lee rage generation, which he desperately needs, boosts his skill damage, which is still one of the highest in the game, and makes that debuff happen so much faster. If you get that down to a 6 or a 7 second skill window, you have this up a quarter of the time, which is ridiculous. Lee also boosts squad attack by 24%, and to activate that, you only need a handful of troops other than ranged. So you can put 99% ranged, 1% in riders, so you're not sacrificing too much attack, to activate that 24% and do an insane amount of damage. Another good commander is just to boost his squad attack, and that is Nakano. Nakano increases squad attack by 24%, lasts 3 seconds, and that will boost Lewis's damage by a decent amount. The reason people tend to like using Nakano is because she also has pretty decent ranged squad attack buffs and chances to do additional damage, which do get factored into the 30% skill damage buff from Lewis. All in all, you're not going to go wrong here running a full range squad with Nakano. If you have Lewis but don't have Lee or another legendary, one option you can is, of course, Charlie. Charlie with Lewis will get it down to about 5 seconds for a skill cycle, and that is a lot of damage factor in 5 seconds. Knowing that if he hits 5 targets, that 250 plus about another 150 in 5 seconds from Lewis, plus all of the other rage buffs and skill damage buffs from Charlie's skill tree, it's pretty nuts. Plus, you can run infantry or ranged with Charlie, and it'll still be fairly effective, because he's got a nice 12% infantry squad attack if you haven't boosted Lewis's skills enough yet. Now on Garrison, I've seen a couple of pairs. Tom being as high damage as he is, plus having the counterattack damage once every 3 seconds, is something that you will see a lot for low swarm Garrison commanders. I personally like seeing Thunder Lewis. Having that healing and AoE means they're probably going to outlast any rally that hits them. And you occasionally see Raigoro for counterattack damage and a little bit of rage generation on the wall. But most people tend to favor Tom or Thunder. And with that, that's everything you need to know about running Lewis. Again, thank you, Danger Ghost, for suggesting this video to me. I apologize that it took 2 weeks for me to get to. If you have any questions or content ideas, please leave them in the comments below. I'm more than happy to do more videos about any of these commanders if you require additional information. And with that, this is Mr. Brain, your friendly neighborhood gaming dad, signing off.